Hi everyone. Is this working? There we go. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for the School of Kinesiology's DEI speaker panel, hosted by the Sport Management Department in conjunction with our SM Student Boards. Tonight's discussion is going to focus on DEI initiatives at the National Hockey League and Black Girl Hockey Club, the progress that has been made to date, areas of improvement, and lessons for our community on how to create meaningful change. My name is Alana, and I'm joined with two guests that have some very valuable insight and experience. Starting off, we have Ms. Melissa Parnagian, the Manager of Growth Strategy for Social Impact and Legislative Affairs at the National Hockey League. Ms. Parnagian operates at the intersection of sport and society, where she uses sport's unique platform as a way to leverage social change. At the NHL, she develops strategy and authors content for efforts that make hockey more socially conscious, diverse, and inclusive. Her work has appeared in speeches, videos, and viral social media posts that have all worked to raise awareness and drive powerful action. In 2021, she was honored with Front Office Sports Writing 25 Award, which is given to extraordinary upcomers in the industry. A Princeton and Harvard alumna, she has experience with political campaigns and outreach to elected officials. Also joining us, we have Dr. Tunisha Singleton, a multimedia producer, creative strategist, speaker, and professor. Dr. Singleton is dedicated to impactful media and building dope experiences. Her expertise lies at the cross-section of sports, culture, and storytelling, with special attention on identity, fan engagement, and community relations. Her creative practice is both validated and informed by her PhD in media psychology, which allows for her to help clients with cultural insights, innovation, and matching their values to action. She's both the producer and the host of the I Have Questions podcast, as well as president of the board of directors for the Black Girl Hockey Club, a nonprofit org dedicated to making hockey more inclusive for Black women, our families, and our allies. If you have questions for either of our panelists at the duration of the event, hold on to them because we will have a Q&A session towards the end of the hour. So we have a lot of wealth of knowledge to kind of work through, so let's just get right into it. Starting off, could you guys tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds, how you got to these roles, and then your specific work with DEI in these roles?
Sure. So as Alana kind of gave a little preview of, my pathway to the NHL was not at all typical. I had fully intended to go into politics, the traditional political system. Both my undergrad and grad degree at Princeton and Harvard are in public policy, and I had been interning on political campaigns in the offices of elected officials. But it was right around the time I got to grad school, which for me was 2017, that I started to think about all the ways that people outside the political system, like athletes, could affect the kind of conversations we were having on social issues. What topics were front of mind? What was the public conscious about? So just out of my own interest, while I was in grad school, I started to do some work at the intersection of sport and society. One of that area for me was interning at the Players Tribune, which has really pioneered a model of storytelling that connects athlete stories to social issues. And another piece of that was organizing and moderating a panel much like this on the intersection of sport and racial justice. And that's actually where I met a former NHL executive who told me about this office at the league. So right now, as a manager in the Office of Social Impact, Growth, and Legislative Affairs, I work on any projects that make the league more socially conscious. And DEI is one where the NHL has the most growth potential to really be authentic in our social consciousness journey. And my role allows me to do that in different ways. So some days I'm working directly with players to help them activate their platforms. Sometimes I'm working on content and storytelling to make it more representative. And other days it's strategizing to bring youth hockey programs into new neighborhoods for kids of color. So it varies.
And, you know, for me, I think it's also a kind of untraditional path to get there. My background was in film and radio. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be this multimedia mobile person. And that's what I studied at undergrad. I went to UC Santa Cruz. I did film and radio. And I wanted to make content. I wanted to be in that space. But I had grown up to being a sports fan. My entire family, we were a big sports house. And didn't watch hockey when we were kids. I'm sure we'll get into this later, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but we didn't watch hockey. It just wasn't for us, which is what we'll get into that later. But grew up playing sports, loving sports, and after film school, I went and got my master's at San Diego State, and I started doing screenwriting and production. I moved to LA, and I worked there for over a dozen years doing all kinds of different things. You wear multiple hats when you're in LA and kind of all over the place, but my fandom never left. I think that's super, super important, and that's a perspective that you have to remember too, regardless of what industry you're gonna be working in, you're consumers first before you're producers. And so I always remembered that, and I recognized that I was constantly still live tweeting games, but I realized too, I was working at like the Viper Room, the Key Club in Hollywood, and I was running their social media accounts. This is back in like 2012. And I recognized like, hey, there's something's going on here. My fandom is evolving, right? I have a pocket sports bar now that I constantly just navigate into. So then I found this media psychology doctoral program, which is what I have my PhD in. And so when I approached that school, I was like, hey, has anybody looked at sports and fandom and that intersection of sports and society that's so important? They're like, no. And I was like, here's a lot of money. And so that is what I did. And what my dissertation was in, I graduated in 2017, and I called it digital fandemonium. And I was looking at the impact media has on that intersection of sports and society, the role story plays, the influence media has, what that participatory culture is of fan engagement and audience engagement, and what is the sport experience. No, I'm back, okay. Now moving. But what is that sport experience, right? So, hello, okay, great. Looking at it from like this multi-dimensional aspect, right? You have the fan, you have the self, you have the community, you have the organization, the brand, right? So looking at all of that, I recognized that there was a big opportunity in community impact. And it was November of 2019, I saw a tweet from @BlackGirlHockey. And I was like, you jiving. Like, there's no damn way there's anything called Black Girl Hockey Club. Like, there's no way. I thought someone was trolling me. And so I just went down that rabbit hole. Looked at the website, I saw the black girl with the afro puffs and the paint on the cheeks, and I was like, yes, like I just kept getting more excited. And there was an invitation to meet up in LA when the Golden Knights were in town. So I was like, I'll play your Reindeer games, fine, here's some money. And I show up outside LA Live at 10 a.m. and there was already like 50 people there. Black, white, Latin, Asian, gay, straight, trans, old, young, babies, handicapped, veterans, everything. It was the most diverse collection of people I'd ever seen, let alone at a hockey event, right? Like you barely see that at Starbucks or a park, right? I saw this at a hockey event, which growing up again was not for us. So I was like, so I am standing in the middle of my dissertation and a life of research and a life of being a sports fan. I'm seeing something evolve, something's changing here, right? And this is dope. So I met Renee, who was there, Renee Hess, who was our founder and executive director, and we became a licensed nonprofit like in that year. She, started this organization because she recognized there is a problem, there is a gap. And so when I met her, I was like, listen, we are now BFFs. And I want to work with you. And so cut to became the president on the board of directors the following year. And we have been exploring it really ever since, and always just trying to audit the space and recognize gaps that we can help fulfill.
That's fascinating. You guys have very unique paths to the industry in hockey, and you currently exist in very unique spaces. That kind of transitions us into the next question. From where you stand in your perspective, what are some of the most pervasive DEI issues that exist within hockey and the sport industry at large? And then how are your organizations seeking to tackle these issues specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that hockey is a predominantly white sport. I would encourage anyone who's not familiar with the history of the game to recognize that it has had participation from diverse groups from the beginning as well. So maybe Google the Colored Hockey League from 1895 after tonight's session and learn a little bit about that. But it is still a predominantly white sport. And so that means we need to interrogate two things. One, what are the system structures and experiences that have prevented people of color from feeling like they could thrive in hockey? And two, how do we activate, educate, and build pathways for people who are currently in positions of power in the game, who tend to be older, whiter males, to really create those opportunities for people of color to seize their place in hockey? And if we think about how that issue has been discussed in the past, I think across the sports industry, people used to assume that DEI could be one person's job description, that this could be something in one department. And it's become very clear that DEI needs to be part of everyone's job description if you want to have authentic culture change. It's got to activate across every operation of your daily business. So that framework was a founding principle of the NHL's Executive Inclusion Council, which was established in 2020. It includes team owners, general managers, and other executives. And it has formed to really set the strategy for the NHL's and all 32 clubs activations around DEI going forward. And it established 7 dimensions on which DEI resonates in order to actually make a holistic approach to this work. And I'm just going to run through the 7 very quickly so you get a sense of all the different areas that are involved in DEI. It's not just one function. There's leadership, which is how you're elevating new voices to the decision-making table around these issues. Employment, general diversification of the employee base. Education, to make sure everyone has a shared baseline understanding of DEI, which every NHL league office employee has received that education, and every active NHL player will receive that education. Marketing, how we're more representative and authentic with the audiences we're trying to reach. Youth participation, getting more kids of color in that stream. Business partnerships, how we work with businesses and sponsors to represent our values. And community and civic engagement, which is how we show up in world affairs off ice to benefit and empower Black, Indigenous, people of color, and other underrepresented groups with our platform. So those are all the areas that we've identified where DEI has to be part of everyday inclusive thinking.
Absolutely. And with each one of those are different touch points of an opportunity, right? Because there are these issues. There's this gatekeeping, right? Like, oh, this is a white sport. When Black Girl Hockey Club started, our mission, it has never wavered. We're working to make a welcoming space for Black women, our families, our friends, and our allies, those that support us and love us within hockey, because there is a recognized gap that we can't participate at all of those levels. From a marketing level, oh, it's not branded for us. It's from a youth playing level, oh, it's the most expensive sport to play. So that will automatically start to remove like some families, and demographically, that can't afford to do that, or and regionally, right? So there's all of these different areas, those touch points, those obstacles become opportunities when a nonprofit organization does that work, right? To be able to recognize, all right, we can be corrective. We can start to build solutions and making a space for ourselves, right? This is a community thing. We get DMs constantly of young and old, all ages of Black, brown, they're screenshotting the comments and the replies that they get online. They're telling us of experiences that they have in person, whether it be in Denver or in Vegas or in LA, all the time. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking stuff. So these are all super, super important things. And there's stuff that the sports industry at large can do too. And part of it is, if we're thinking about like how to get it right? It's like, okay, well, what is right? It's making a stand on like what you stand for and what will you tolerate? Do you tolerate racism within your fan club? Will you tolerate people that are misogynistic? Will you tolerate this gatekeeping? Like, no, this is for us. Because for me, it's very much like, if you see something, say something. And for me, it's like, I think the Knicks did this like last season in the playoffs, like when someone threw ice at like Trae Young, like after this, and then like, it was after the game, after they were eliminated or something. And then, I don't know what his name, I forgot his name, like the GM of the Knicks or something. Everybody hates him. But the Knicks organization, they at least, like, I think they tweeted something and I was like, they found the fan, right? And then, all right, well, let's make them famous then. Picture out, and they posted all that stuff, but it's like, we don't want you to be a fan of the Knicks, right? If you think that violence is okay, right? Or if that behavior is okay, then you're banned and you're not allowed here at MSG anymore, right? So sport teams, anyone in a position of influence and power, right? If you see something like that, dismiss it. You don't want them a part of your community, which is what obviously sports, brands, teams, franchises, that's what it is, because it becomes a poor reflection of you if you enable it, which if you go that is enabling. Ignoring is the same thing. You think it's cool then. You have to be much more active in dismissing poor behavior. I think there was something I saw too, like in Las Vegas, there was like a local metal band, you know, and like when I moved to Vegas in the summer of 2020, and it was right when, you know, there was BLM and George Floyd, Breonna Taylor protests going up and down Las Vegas Boulevard, and there was like some metal band kind of playing, and there was a joke. I wasn't there, but I saw this story kind of unfold online, and there was a guy, you know, that was anti-BLM and was wearing swastikas and just, you know, really, really hateful stuff. And the band was like, and he was wearing this band's shirt. And the band was like, take it off. Don't have to want you support. No, don't listen to my music when you're doing that. If that is more active things, explicit, that's intention, right? This whole thing, that is being intentful, right? And that's an opportunity that all sports, all places of influence can start to make a change then. So in our organization, like we're doing, recognizing these types of things, we've started, you know, I'm really big on trying to match values with action. So it's like, what do we value? Black girl magic, inclusion, empowerment, equality, education. These things are so important for us. So we have a scholarship program that we give out 3 times a year. We just finished giving out, you know, north of $15,000 to 12 different girls. We do this 3 times a year. We recognize too that there's people that want to work in hockey, but feel like maybe they're not for them, right? Again, that whole concept. So we launched a leadership and development program to create mentorships and have people of all ages, all gender identities that are Black, to pairing them up for meaningful 6-month relationships. Not one of those one and done, here's an email, here's my card kind of thing, but a meaningful 6-month relationship. We have digital services, we have self-care Sundays, like we have these types of things where it's a network, it's a community, and we have your back. This is a global thing. So it's just recognizing where there's a problem and then making a solution. That is literally, I think, what innovation is. It doesn't require a white lab coat or test tubes or anything like that. You see a problem and it starts with what data? That's it. That is being innovative, when you are able to build something that is solution-based.
It seems like from everything you guys have said that your organizations are very intentional with implementing structures in place to create true lasting change, which is super refreshing because it can be surface level stuff, and it very often is. And this is very, you know, intentional stuff being put into the foundation of your organizations to make sure that, you know, it's going to the top, it's coming out. Kind of transitioning into initiatives. For some context, both Black Girl Hockey Club and the NHL have recently launched social media campaigns such as #GetUncomfortable and #WeSkate4. Could you tell us about how these campaigns and similar ones have helped you reach the goals in your organization? And then do you find that the reach of these initiatives is at all impacted, could be positively or negatively, by the relatively smaller audience that hockey has in comparison to larger sports such as football or basketball?
Well, in the case of the We Skate For campaign, I think the audience size was less of a consideration because we were speaking directly to our fans and trying to capitalize on a very key moment in hockey. And so for some context, the We Skate For campaign was launched during our return to play, which is what we called resuming our season after the pandemic forced us to pause. And we were conscious as we were making our return to play campaign of just how much the world had changed since our players last took the ice. Not just because of the pandemic, but also because of the reignited racial justice movement after the murder of George Floyd and frankly, too many others. And we knew that our players and fans of color had experienced those past few months in a very emotional way. And we knew that our players and fans who are not of color had started to think differently about their own potential to be change agents in their communities and what that really meant as a responsibility. So that's all going on in the hockey community. But we also know that historically, people haven't thought of hockey as a place that speaks out on social issues, that it's not really seen as part of the culture of the game. So what we wanted to do with the We Skate For campaign is to say very clearly that what we skate for on the ice can and should and will connect to what happens in the world. And if you listen to the launch video that we put out on our first night back in prime time of Stanley Cup Finals, you'll hear the narrator of the script saying, when an issue is bigger than the game, we must speak out, starting with 3 words we need to get comfortable saying, Black Lives Matter. So it was very direct. And I think the goals of the campaign and the impact that it's had, I'd probably put in 2 categories. One is that it set a new standard or new expectation for the NHL showing up in these conversations about racial justice and other social issues. We were going to be part of these discussions and we wanted the hockey community to follow along. And the second is really how it gave a nudge to our players to remove any doubt that they might have had about whether the league was supportive or encouraging of them using their platforms. It was a clear signal that we wanted them to use their platforms. And anecdotally, we know there's no sort of systematized way to measure this, but at least 125 of our players and alumni use their social media platforms to put out their own statements, nothing that we, posted, to call specifically for equality, reform, or racial justice during that playoff period. And that's a huge step forward for hockey, which traditionally you don't see players sharing too much about their lives in any capacity. But here they were sharing how they felt about a very, important social issue where many of them maybe hadn't found their voice before. So certainly there were a lot of factors that led players to speak up in that way. But I think the We Skate For campaign, which had We Skate For Equality, We Skate For Black Lives, all the players had hoodies with those phrases on them. I think that was certainly one of the reasons why we saw such a high level of player activism.
The pandemic changed a lot. It shifted a lot in a lot of people, especially when sports was gone. A couple of, there's some that were like, hey, where's all the stuff that kept the people busy, like those. But then there was also a huge resurgence, obviously, and like social justice and building more like racial equality in here. And I think one of the larger sentiments that came out was there was a lot of people reiterating this statement in, I wish America loved Black people the way they love Black culture. And this summer, obviously, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, countless others, Ahmaud Arbery, everything that happened. And the summer, you can't not feel that. Like everyone, we felt that. And Black Girl Hockey Club, we wanted to try and do something and wanted to help build these types of conversations and recognize too that we can't fix a problem we didn't start. You can't expect Black people to fix the problem that we didn't start when it comes to this, right? Racism. Because everyone kind of looked at us like, okay, well, what do you want, right? Like, it's like, why, this is not, you can't put that all on us. So that summer, we were just like, okay, what do we do? We need to make a campaign. We built an advocacy committee and we had really heavy discussions. And we created this campaign called Get Uncomfortable, because these are uncomfortable conversations sometimes, especially when they've never had to have it before. Learning what microaggressions are and learning, about the history. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that this was a white sport or that people felt this way and all these things. So it got uncomfortable. People started learning what DEI was for the first time, right? And people were like, oh, I gotta learn this now. Like there's a level of uncomfort that people have to have. So we called our campaign Get Uncomfortable. And it was built, in our advocacy committee in order to make people accountable. Take our Get Uncomfortable pledge, saying that you vow to do work to make hockey and to make racism, to combat this and help us dismantle this on and off the ice. On and off the ice, because this is a human issue. This is a human issue. So we need all humans to do this. And you can't rely on just women of color, and BIPOC to fix this. It takes everyone. So we made a pledge. You can blackgirlhockeyclub.org, you find it, you take the pledge. Thousands and thousands have taken it. Many teams have taken it and taken the pledge and have promoted that they're taking the pledge with us. And our tenets within that are to employ, to educate, and to encourage. And each of those pillars, it's about, helping educate yourselves on, again, like this history of hockey, how you can be impactful. Because what needs to happen in Vegas is going to be different in Ann Arbor. It's going to be different in Tampa. It's going to be different in Toronto. It's very, very different. And so you have to do that audit, that self-work, and recognizing where those problems are, what those gaps are, and how maybe you can plant one little seed to help try and change that. Because none of this is going to be fixed with one swing. Because this is a long line of history that we're looking to correct. And so when we built that advocacy campaign for Get Uncomfortable, that went 1 year. So now we're in our second year of Get Uncomfortable, and we've made the initiative for this year in the workplace. And so looking again at like, how can we now start to help build some better solutions and some corrective things here that will impact dismantling racism on and off the ice, especially in the workplace.
That's fascinating. I love how you are just kind of transitioning that same campaign into different facets of issues. And you just mentioned impact again. I know we talked in our conversation before over dinner and we ended up referencing the title of this event. So this question will be referencing the title of this event. Could you both tell us about what personally intention versus impact means to you? And then kind of tying into that, what are some successful initiatives that you've had at your organizations that have been impactful, and then maybe some areas of improvement that haven't been as impactful as you would have hoped?
I think intent versus impact is a measure of how seriously you take your job. If you're operating at 30,000 feet with great intentions, but it's not resonating on the ground, then you're not really doing your job of making change in sport. And from an organizational level, that idea of speaking to people on the ground who have life experiences that matter and that can change how we strategize around these issues led us to establish 3 subcommittees, each focused on a different constituency group in hockey that can tell us the best way forward. So there's a youth hockey inclusion committee with youth hockey parents, participants, and organizers telling us about their experiences on the ground and how we can address them. There's a fan inclusion committee, hockey influencers, broadcasters, marketing execs, obviously focused on the fan experience. And there's a player inclusion committee, which I work most closely on. This has current and former NHL players and elite women's pro players, like Olympians and from the professional leagues, both players of color and white allies, who tell us how we can do better to empower underrepresented players at the elite level. And I can give you an example of how the PIC's feedback has been really helpful to us in aligning intention versus impact. So one of the player inclusion committee's focus areas was training and education, and how they told us each NHL locker room would benefit from a standard baseline educational experience. They gave them the terminology to speak publicly and confidently on DEI and to lead these conversations amongst themselves so that they could go take action in more meaningful ways. And as we were in the process of designing what this training would look like, they told us, you could take something off the shelf. There are many organizations that run these kind of trainings. But if you want it to resonate and have an impact in the hockey locker room long term, you need to tie it to some of the values that really have presence in a hockey locker room. And for anyone who's played or been close to the game, one of those values is teamwork. So important, how you show up for your teammates, how you make everyone feel like there's a bond. And so to the extent that we could frame DEI with teamwork, how teamwork is built through inclusion, that a more inclusive team makes you show up as your full self, which makes the team stronger, which makes everybody better. That was the framing they suggested so that we could actually have an impact on the way players engage with DEI. And that's the framing we're using right now as we develop this training, which we intend to launch, in the near future. So I think making sure that we're having those conversations with people whose life experiences can show us the way forward is sort of at the heart of what intent versus impact means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you nailed it. And impact, you can see impact. You see the result. It's making sure that with everything that you do, you're aligning your values with action. There's specific behaviors that you can activate, that you can execute to achieve certain things. And that has to be done very consciously, right? Like intent, like somebody cannot mean to hit your car. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I still got a dent here. Like, I don't care what you intended to do, right? But there is an impact. So it's making sure that you have like a metrics of success too, that you have those laid out. Like how do you define success? So whenever, within Black Girl Hockey Club or otherwise, if I am building any type of campaign, what does success look like for this specific thing? What's our call to action, right? Like what is going to be these measurable, I can very clearly see that this is not only successful, but that it's starting to make that impact. And with the scholarship program and our leadership development, I can tell you, like every time, the best times of the year for us is when we get on these Zoom calls and we're congratulating multiple girls from around the world that we've just gifted them $5,000, $3,000, $1,000, and their parents are on there, and there's always tears because these young girls, they feel seen. They feel recognized. They don't feel alone anymore. That is a very, very clear illustration of the impact. And it's, again, reflective of not the problems, right? The financial gatekeeping, and just the fact that this is the most expensive sport to play. And so for us to be able to offset some of those costs is huge. It's huge, and it can be life-changing for so many. And, especially when you recognize too, that like, this is, I'm 38 years old. My mom is still, she's 76, like she was born in 45. And so she'll be like, y'all watch hockey yet? Dang, you still working with it? Like, so she still has this kind of mentality that like, oh my God, like she grew up not thinking hockey was for us, right? But in our house, like one, it's always the same season as NBA. And so that was always the priority in our house. And I grew up playing basketball. And so we never felt like we got to watch it. But my family was so supportive. They're the most empowerment. They just, all of my strength comes from my family and being my support system. I grew up watching pro wrestling. I was weird. They didn't care. Like they were just like, yeah, like whatever she wants to do, she can do it. And so they raised me to be very, very proud. That is unique, I'm understanding the more I grow up. Not everybody has a positive support system. And so that also helps reveal other ways that organizations, nonprofit, and in the league and affiliates, right? Stakeholders of the entire sport experience, because there's so many different touch points, right? Brands, food, commerce, like all of this stuff. Those are ways that you can start to build communities. And that fan experience is so damn important. It's so important. And so when creating strategies to strengthen and revitalize and activate fan experiences, remote and in person, right? These hybrid events, because it's a multidimensional experience. We have to do it with the intent and making sure that it's informed by something we want to achieve. And it can be to have fun, inserting this like unapologetic joy, like I always like to say, right? Making sure that people feel comfortable, that they feel welcome, right? Those are still forms of social good. And oftentimes, I think sports is left out of that, and I'm doing everything to reemphasize that because it is so important. And I think more conscious work in that is an area that, this can improve, and specifically, in niche areas like hockey, MMA got a hell of a lot of work to do. That's another sport that I'm a massive fan of too, but sometimes I have to say it like this because it can be very, very toxic too. And I live in Las Vegas and I see it daily, but so I think like that expansion, like outside even of the NHL, there's just so much room for growth and improvement when it comes to doing things intentionally so that you have impact and you're building it so that you can actually see a direct result and making sure that it's tied to your values. You're not wasting anybody's time, because diversity, people think oftentimes like, oh, it's like a checkbox, but it's also diversity of thought. And so it's making sure that you're having different perspectives in the room. If you hire an echo chamber, then what the hell is getting done? There's no progression. And that's a big thing too, that will help you differentiate intent and impact.
Absolutely. And I think it's just important to reemphasize how unique your strategies are at your organizations to be impactful, and how important it is that it's what works for your organization, because what works at one isn't going to work at another. And in order to really make these things last, you have to build something that's unique and, specific to you, so you can make sure that it's having the most impact. I'm unfortunately at my last question, and we talked about being in sync earlier. We all have the same Ziggurats order, so you segued into this last question perfectly. And it's a three-parter, so I'm going to try to break it down. First, how do you guys set achievable and measurable goals for DEI initiatives at your organizations? And then the second part of that is, what type of process occurs to kind of check the effectiveness of those organizations? Do you have a benchmark process? And then lastly, what steps do you take when it may show that they aren't working as well or having the impact they were intended to?
When you talk about achievable and measurable goals, you're really talking about data. And data is important to benchmark not just where you are, but then to follow up year over year or season over season and make sure that progress is being made. So I talked a little bit about those 7 dimensions earlier, and in 2020, the Executive Inclusion Council commissioned what was the first ever league-wide survey of the state of DEI. What are the clubs doing across those 7 dimensions? So we had that benchmark in 2020, and then we followed it up in 2021 to see how much progress had been made, even in a very strange pandemic year that affected some clubs' ability to activate. But we were still able to see some important milestones that had been reached. So as of now, 100% of NHL clubs support hockey programs that either benefit kids of color, LGBTQ+ community members, women and girls, or people with disabilities. That's an important benchmark for us to know and then to keep building on, because we know clubs know how to do it. So let's amplify it even further. The EIC also commissioned a workforce demographic study, which you'll hear more about in the coming weeks. So I won't give too much away, but it is a really first of its kind look at diversity at all 32 NHL clubs and the league office in a way that moves beyond check the box categories of race and gender. Goes into intersectionality, languages spoken, multiracial identification, family immigration history, things that allow us to really better reflect and advocate for that level of authentic diversity in our company. And when you talk about how data can sometimes help us course correct and make better decisions, I would actually point to so much of what we learned from social media. Because when we put content out online, you get immediate data based on how those posts are performing. And one area of that we've been more intentional about in the past few years is celebrating hockey's pioneers. So whether that's Willie O'Ree, our first Black player, Larry Kwong, our first player of Asian descent, many others. And we started to notice that sometimes our posts about hockey pioneers did exceptionally well, outpacing regular hockey content. And sometimes they didn't do quite so well. They sort of seemed to get lost. And why was that? And so we looked at the data of which posts did very well and which posts didn't, reach their full potential. And we found that the ones that didn't do so well tended to show those pioneers in on ice content, like in the midst of gameplay. So it sort of got lost in our regular content. Versus if we showed those pioneers in moments that were clearly historical, whether it's black and white footage, behind the scenes, off ice, those posts and content pieces did extremely well. The post about the Colored Hockey League was our second most engaged post of all time. Post about Manel Rayum, who was a female goalie, who first woman to play in professional sports in North America, played goalie for the Tampa Bay Lightning in a preseason game. That was our 6th most engaged post of all time. And both of those were in that more historical framing. And so data allowed us to make that determination and to know that we can reach more audiences with this very important educational content if we just shift how we're presenting it.
Yeah, I could be a data nerd too, and definitely like it comes from like the mixed methods, right? Of like my dissertation and looking at quant and qual, right? It helps you, not only reveal those things of like what performed well and why. That's so important, but for me, the storytelling, like, and it's totally illustrated and right, and like the points you made about like what performed well and why. Storytelling. We've been telling stories since before the wheel. So it's natural that like the ways that we communicate has also evolved, right? And so social media, it's that pocket connector, right? Like I call it my little digital sports bar and stuff that we're able to like live tweet and communicate in real time with stuff, but it also really, really helps us educate and tell. By telling stories, that allows us to put a piece of ourselves in there. And not only, it helps bring in like new audiences as well. Right? Because there's going to be different touch points of everyone will have a different story about like, oh, how did you become a fan of this? Or where do you, like, what was your first game experience like, right? So because we all have our own different stories and stuff, the way that we're able to communicate that, I think is so huge in helping us, sometimes have achievement and positive results based on our initiatives and our various campaigns, right? Like getting comfortable and things like that. I've even noticed too, like with our leadership and development program, it's one of our newer ones. We're in our 2nd term right now. And from the 1st term, we had to really, do that audit right afterwards, like what didn't work, why not, and then make pivot. And so when we launched our 2nd term, the beginning of this year, now we're implementing new features, new strategies, and a whole new kind of structure where now we have to have like monthly check-ins, right? Where someone from our LDC committee is checking in on each mentorship. It's like, how's it going? Making sure that everyone on both sides of the table are benefiting, because this leadership and development, that's not only for the professional, but also for the mentee as well. Because many are first-time mentors and they've never done it before. So there's things that they can learn from a leadership perspective. And then oftentimes on the other side of the desk, so to speak, this is someone who's doing a career change. This is now their first job or relationship in hockey in some way. So this is a career change for them and they're learning a new field, they're strengthening new skill sets for them. And so these monthly check-ins kind of allow us to make sure that both are progressing, that the pairing, it's almost like, like online dating or something. Like we really sat and really just looked at everyone that not only applied to be a mentor, but also the mentees and really made sure that it was going to be a successful match in this type of pairing based on like their goals and the expectations and the experience that they explicitly told us that they want to achieve out of this. And so even when marketing it, it's like I think the ones that perform the best always are those like low touch, not high production, let's get real, right? And it was just like a selfie video of me describing like how important this new program is with the call to action, like if you're interested, apply as a mentor or as a mentee, and making sure that there's closed captions, making sure that it is reflective of the type of thumb-stopping content that goes on right now with TikTok. So a lot of memes and emojis like mixed in and stuff. There's closed caption, there's like quick frame. So like there's just narrative media production features that like I get to employ when helping produce content for Black Girl Hockey Club like this too, that helps us determine like, oh, and because of that video, we got 10 more applications this time than we did the last time. And so many more are saying like, we want to be in, we want to be in, we want to be in. When the first time, there wasn't that level of marketing or communication that we put out. And so the result wasn't as reflective, right? So it's learning and it's pivoting and just being honest too. Like you can make mistakes. Like we're human, we're supposed to. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. So it's fine, but we have to do something. We have to be out there and actively and being confident, enough to do that and recognizing when you need help and calling for that. Like that's why we have each other's back.
I love that. Thank you guys so much. This wraps up this portion of the event. We're now going to transition into audience Q&A. I think Sarah's going to come grab the mic. You have it on? Yep. And then we'll just take questions from the audience.
Hi.
Hi. Hey.
You guys have talked a lot about like a ton of things that you've been working on and like initiatives and stuff, but I was just curious, and it's okay if you've already touched on it, but if you both had like a favorite project or like a favorite initiative or a story about something that you worked on that you found really fulfilling or something.
The leadership and development is one that I'm really, really proud of. Because it didn't exist until I came into position as president of the board. And the scholarship is a huge bread and butter, right, of Black Girl Hockey Club. It is, and it's so, so important. It's our flagship program. It's our oldest program, right? But I recognize, I was like, what if people can't skate? What about the photographers? What about the broadcasters? What about the graphic designers out there? What about, all these, what about people that want to be, Black folks want to be refs, they want to be personal trainers or physical trainers or be in, hockey operations and this type of stuff, but feel like they can't, so like, I don't want to give them a scholarship. They don't want, because that is transactional. That's like, here's some money and they keep, but not saying I don't like money, but the point is like, how do we kind of make a solution for that? And that's when, I wrote out this plan. We started our committee. We had these conversations within the board and got the full support and said, floor it. Let's go. And so seeing the folks that we have in our mentorship program and that those that have graduated already from it and continue to work with their mentees, like the San Jose Sharks has been remarkable. And they were, one of the first organizations that came on board, and our mentee for that person, she's been still in communication with everyone from the Sharks and was able to kind of float around. And I think she lives in Texas, so these are still like remote relationships, right? Like COVID's still a thing, but just the ability of like hearing how impactful that was for her and just how happy she was to learn and really get direction for, okay, does she want to get her MBA in something, kind of related to the field? So just, that's been one of my favorite moments of just making something out of nothing, because there was nothing. And now seeing, okay, I've got an entire spreadsheet of folks that want work and want relationships and mentorships and introductions into all kind of aspects of hockey. And seeing that call, and that's something that I and everyone else in our organization are really working hard to help fulfill and see those things get done.
Yeah, that's, I mean, even just seeing online, some of those same reactions have been pretty cool to witness. For me, I would say my favorite part of the work is working directly with our players and alumni, because I think the relationship between players and fans is so special. And when you're able to seize it in an authentic way, you can see how a player being courageous, saying how they view the world, what they think is important, can lead a fan to think differently about an issue, move from agreement to action on an issue, get someone who is on the fence to jump over that fence and actually, fully embrace a cause. And there's been so much working against that kind of momentum just throughout history of sports, right? There's always been a mentality that players either shouldn't talk about issues beyond the game or can't because they're not experts in the space. And so
That one always got me. I'm like, so they're not a person? They sleep in skates? That shut up and dribble stuff is like out of control of me.
Expertise is not required to care about society, right? Like, and I think
For Black 24/7.
yeah, and the more that so there's that piece of it, the impacting the issues, and then there's also the way you see it affect the player. When they actually use their platform and it works and they see that impact, they're suddenly more confident, they're more excited about the work. So one of my projects is the Player Inclusion Committee that I mentioned, but I also work with players who are not on that committee. And I would use as an example here, a video I did with Mark Frazier and Eric Branson. Mark Frazier, former NHL player who happens to be Black, Eric Branson, NHL player who happens to be white. And they did a roundtable on the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder.
That was so good.
And yeah, they were so honest and so authentic in how Mark processed that on an emotional level, how Eric talked about how he wanted to be there for Mark as a friend and how that led him to think differently about society. And I have to imagine that any fans watching that were reflecting on similar conversations that they've had over the past year with their buddies. So content like that really positions both of them to be, even greater advocates going forward, and also moves the cause forward. So that's the kind of stuff that I get really excited about.
Yeah, anytime storytelling can be used and amplified like that, it's just it's so powerful. For sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. I love both of those.
Cool. So I guess both you can answer this, but for so long, like social responsibility, community relations has always been kind of like a side piece for teams, leagues, agencies, kind of like been like an afterthought. But like I think now more than ever, you're starting to see kind of a shift in terms of the way community relations, social responsibility can drive revenue, because now you're starting to speak their language. They're talking about money, profit, revenue. So I guess, Melissa, for you, like, have you seen kind of like a shift in terms of like the mindset of the league in terms of like how they view social responsibility, community relations, social impact, giving back?
Yeah, I think this conversation has been very much based in DEI as the right thing to do, period. But it's also the right thing to do for business, because the world is diversifying, and if hockey doesn't, where does hockey go? So in order to grow the game, you have to reach out to underrepresented groups. There is no other pathway forward. Already, I believe 1/3 of NHL cities are in spaces that are already majority minority, and that number is only going to grow. So if your arena, if your stands are not reflecting that reality, where is your ticket revenue going to come from in 10 or 15 years? And that demographic shift is something that the whole organization is very aware of, and has really understood, I think, and embraced the idea of DEI as a pathway forward for business as well. And that's why some of our marketing has gotten to be more representative, more reflective, more intentional about reaching audiences outside the hockey bubble. So how we're cutting across fashion and music and culture to reach folks who aren't checking NHL.com. How do we get on their radar? How do we make sure we're on their timeline? And that's the only way we can bring those audiences in as fans. So yes, whether you're approaching it from a moral perspective, a life experience perspective, or from a bottom line perspective, everything leads back to DEI and hockey.
And biz dev, like business development is so important for recognizing those type of partnerships and relationships for all those stakeholders, like you talked about, from food and beverage to brands to equipment, all the way down. I think young people, like your generation, it has impacted so positively for implementing this type of social change and good. Because look, what are they now? The Washington Commanders? Because what happened? FedEx said, change, get your stuff together, or you're not gonna play on this field anymore. Okay. But how long have we been saying that? Like, how long have we been saying, like, dude, like, really, this long still? Rents, really? So for that long, but it took dollars. It took business. It took a brand to stick their neck out and be like, no, enough is enough. And then Commanders is so stupid. Should have stayed in whole sidebar. But it's business and DEI and that type of stuff. Absolutely. Like that stuff is now, like you said, it's at the touch point of everything. We knew that for a long time, but now the rest of the industry is recognizing that too.
You guys kind of just touched on it a little bit, but just kind of like following up, you're mentioning how like our generation's done such a great job like responding to it. And I was just, my question before you mentioned that was more so like on the flip side, like this is such a big change that's happening.
Yeah.
And I'll speak for everyone in the room, we're also in support of this, but it's tough being like a student and like figuring out how do I act and how do I like, create that impact? Like, how do I like make it there? So it's like, see, like you can view it, you can see it. Just like from your two like perspectives, how can we as students kind of like take action on these types of things?
It's such a great question and an honest question. And I think there's something different that probably a lot of people can do, because I think we said this earlier, but it's one of those things that one swing isn't going to correct this stuff, because these are old, ancient ass issues that we're dealing with here, right? We're talking about like racism, inequality, women-ish rights and all of this stuff. So like what to do, it's not a copy and paste solution either. What one person has resources and access to here is going to be different than in Jersey, Florida, et cetera. And so I think just having that radical attitude of really being sincere, and when you recognize it and just listen sometimes. Sometimes listening is so important because an opportunity will reveal itself. If you told me in 2001, when I started undergrad, in 2001, when I started undergrad in 2001, if you told me I'd be I'd be a PhD and the doctor and a PhD, and the board president of a nonprofit, I would have called you several things. Liar would be like the last word of it, right? Like there's no way, like I would never, but it revealed itself to me. But you have to stay true to your beliefs and recognizing too, you're not going to fix everything. You can't. And so we can't have ego and think that I am going to fix it all. Because guess what? There have been a lot of people who tried. Many of them now have buildings named after them because they were murdered. So we're not able to fix everything. What you can do is control what you can control. So where are you? If you see something, say something. It's keeping your eyes open. One of the best lessons I learned, and this is when I was doing my screenwriting, my writing mentor told me, writers, he was like, what'd you do? I was like, oh, I wrote all this stuff. I thought he was going to be so proud of me. He said, look how many pages of the screenplay I wrote. And I was like, wait, you're not going to read it? And he was like, no, writers don't write, writers observe. They listen, they watch, they hear things. You observe first, then you write. You use all of your senses, and then you communicate in your own unique language, like what you have observed. And I was like, oh, So controlling what you can control, observe. Where can you make an impact, right? What you might have resources to, and by resources, it could be a person that you know, it could be a local gym, it could be a local skate park, it can be a book you read, an episode of something that made you think, a book, like anything like these. Because all of those touch points are still they're gonna hit different for some people, right? So you can't dismiss or belittle or believe, oh, this isn't gonna probably do anything, this isn't gonna matter. It really, really can. Because of all of the things that I had gone through between like film school and radio and post-production and writing and podcasts and hosting all of this stuff and stand-up and all these things. It's like a puzzle piece, man, because you'll see that these pieces start to fit and shape something. And the fun part of it is you get to live seeing how your puzzle is put together, because all of the things that you do and can do when they're revealed to you will end up shaping a really excellent puzzle.
And if I could just, Tanisha's point about how there's a million different ways to have impact is spot on. On a professional level, I would say the fact that you and everyone else here is at this conversation is already having a kind of impact, because not everyone who goes into the sports industry is conscious of these issues. So you're here, you're thinking about it, that'll help you no matter where you end up. And on a personal level, I think it's just, you know, everyone has been in those situations where you see someone make a joke that they shouldn't make, or you see someone being treated in a way that you think, is that guy being racially profiled? Is that girl being sexually harassed? Like, and everyone has been in those situations. And there are times when you're like, I don't want to be the guy who says anything. I don't want to cause a problem. I'm just going to like dip out, pretend I didn't see it. And I mean, me too. I've done that, right? And I think it's all of us holding ourselves accountable to being willing to say the hard things out loud. You know, and it's never going to be fun, but it's always going to feel right. And you can see opportunities to do that every day. And even if you seize 1 out of 5 of them, that's making an impact until you gain that confidence to do it every time.
Yeah, just sort of as we wrap up here, what are your hopes for DEI in the future of hockey in the next 5 to 10 years?
Man, I think we hit and, you know, alluded to a lot of it, you know, over this talk. I think, you know, like we said, like diversity is also diversity of thought, and being able to have multiple perspectives and different experiences, being a part of it. This is something that I hope continues to grow. This is something that I hope continues to tell more stories. And we should have many, many more outlets of awesome story. And part of my favorite thing of sports media specifically is like this head and shoulder programming thing, right? So it's like the head is the actual game, like that's your event. And then you have all the shoulder programming, that's everything that supports the game. Pre-season, postseason, pre-game, post-game, fantasy betting, sports, like all of the social media, like all of these are just extra things. Like the game's 3 hours, but sports is 24/7, right? So for me, I think employing like that model, that's something that I would love to see replicated in DEI work, and making sure that it's like, okay, if the head is the game, or if the head is DEI, what are these other programming features that we can do to help support that? And so I would love to see like more growth, more programming, just all around to help really help make this great, you know, like it's such a fun sport, you know, and I don't want anyone to feel excluded. You know, it breaks my heart when I hear those types of things. I'm like, but I understand again, like you said earlier, that not everyone like has that support system, that confidence, you know, to stand up and speak up sometimes. So I would love to see the Black Girl Hockey Club continue to grow and expand and into other areas of hockey and sports industry, period, that creates more networks like this. Because if you, like you said earlier, like if, you know, if you didn't make that call or if you didn't say something that time, there's somebody who has your back that will, you know. So I want to see that continue to happen and excel.
I think that growth is really what we're all driving towards. So 10 to 15 years from now, I want hockey to be a place where everyone can bring their full self to the game, whether that's on the ice, in the stands, in the front office. I want guys who are just on the cusp of stardom, like Quentin Byfield in LA, second overall pick, Keandre Miller in New York. I want those guys to have become household names that inspire the next generation of Black kids to pick up skates and go on the ice. And all of this ladders back to that phrase you hear so often from the NHL, which is hockey is for everyone, which was never meant to be a statement of mission accomplished. It's not a job well done, but it's a vision statement for where the sport can go if we put in the effort and the commitment to make that vision come true. Because to the point Tunisha just made, the things that we love about hockey, the fun, the passion, the teamwork, perseverance, the courage, those things are for everyone. They benefit everyone who's exposed to them. So why wouldn't we do everything we can to make sure everyone has access to those benefits? 10 to 15 years from now, will that work be completed? I don't think DEI work is ever completed.
Exactly.
I think there's always intersections of race, gender, sexual orientation, disability status that you have to continually, find out who's being marginalized. But I do think 10 to 15 years from now, a new generation will grow up with a different understanding of what hockey is, who it's for, and the whole culture that surrounds the game.
Awesome, I think that's a great place to end, but first I want to send a huge thank you to both our panelists for their amazing insights. Also want to extend a huge thank you to all of you on behalf of the SM department and also on behalf of all the student orgs that sponsored it. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you to our panelists. This means a lot to all of our organizations, SM, all of the student orgs. This is furthering our goal of diversity in sports, and it means a lot to us that all of you are here and continuing your education in this field. So thank you to everyone here tonight.
Thank you all.